There is a moment you know by heart, even if you have never spoken it out loud. You walk through a door that is supposed to be yours. You step into a room filled with faces that carry your nose, your grandmother's hands, your grandfather's laugh. And the moment you cross that threshold, something in your chest collapses quietly, the way old houses settle at night without anyone hearing the groan in the walls. The lights are on. The food is warm. The voices are loud. And you are the most alone you have ever been in your life. Not the loneliness of strangers passing you on a city sidewalk, something far more precise. The loneliness of being looked at and still not being seen. The loneliness of existing inside a room where your presence registers as furniture, as background, as the chair no one fights over because no one particularly wants it. You have sat at that table more times than you can count, and every single time your soul has asked the same impossible question underneath the noise of clinking glasses and rehearsed holiday conversation. How is it possible to feel this alone, surrounded by people who are supposed to be mine? That question has lived in the cavity of your chest for years. You have turned it over in the dark, in the shower, in the car during the long drive home after another gathering that left you more hollowed out than when you arrived. You have probably felt guilty for asking it, told yourself you were ungrateful, dramatic, too sensitive, broken in some way that other people around that table did not seem to be. And so you did what surviving in that environment required. You learned to shrink. You learned the precise voltage of the smile that would pass inspection without attracting too much attention. You learned which topics were safe and which ones would cause the room to tighten, and you tucked the real version of yourself somewhere far back behind your sternum where no one could reach it, and you performed. Night after night, holiday after holiday. You became a master of disappearance inside your own family. A ghost so practiced at haunting that you almost forgot there was a living person underneath the performance. Almost. But the soul does not forget what it was made to be, and yours has been screaming softly for a very long time. What I need you to understand before we go any further is this. What you felt in those rooms was not a malfunction in your perception. It was not ingratitude dressed up as pain. It was your spirit accurately reading a spiritual reality that your mind was conditioned to doubt. You were not imagining the chill. You were not being dramatic about the silence that followed when you spoke. You were not too much. You were not the problem. You were a frequency that the room was not built to receive. You were a light operating at a wavelength that disturbed everything in that environment that had agreed to stay dim. And here is the sacred, shattering truth that I need you to hold right now. That rejection was never about your worth. It was about your assignment. The very thing inside you that made them uncomfortable is the very thing God placed there on purpose. Before you were born, before you took your first breath, before your name was ever spoken in that house. Your light was always going to cost you something inside a system built on shadow. That is why in the trilogy, The 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life, the link is in the pinned comment, I explain exactly why the souls who feel most displaced inside their families of origin are often the ones carrying the most concentrated spiritual assignments. The rejection was not a wound without a reason. It was a redirection wearing the most painful costume imaginable. If you have been sitting with the ache of feeling like you were born into the wrong family, what I share there will begin to reframe everything you thought that pain meant. Now let me take you deeper into what was actually happening in those rooms, because you deserve to understand the mechanics of what your body was registering every single time you sat at that table and felt the world narrow around you. There is a science to what loneliness does to a body in those moments. Your nervous system was not neutral during those gatherings. Every time you braced yourself at the door, your body was already preparing for impact. Cortisol rising before you even knocked, the muscles in your jaw tightening, the particular way your stomach would clench when you heard a certain tone of voice that historically meant you were about to be reduced, corrected, overlooked, or treated like an inconvenient reminder of something the family had collectively decided not to examine. Your body was keeping score long before you had language for the game being played. The headaches after holidays were not coincidence. The exhaustion that settled into your bones after hours of performing invisible was not weakness. It was the physiological cost of sustained self-erasure. Your flesh was paying a debt that your spirit never agreed to incur. And in the spiritual architecture beneath all of that, something profound was being constructed that you could not see at the time. Every environment has a spirit that governs it, a frequency that the collective agreement of the people inside it generates over decades, sometimes over generations. Some families carry a spirit of silence, a collective covenant to never name what is real, to perform peace instead of pursuing it, to protect the image of the family above the souls inside it. And when someone is born into that system, carrying a gift for truth, for depth, for the kind of love that requires honesty, that person becomes a natural threat to the covenant. Not because they are dangerous, because they are awake. And you cannot introduce wakefulness into a room that has organized its entire identity around sleep without creating turbulence. You were the turbulence, and the turbulence was not your fault. It was your calling, announcing itself before you even knew what to call it. Think about what it does to a child, to a young soul, to be the one in the family who asks the questions no one else will ask, who feels what no one else will feel, who sees the dysfunction clearly while everyone around them insists with perfect collective certainty that everything is fine. You begin to doubt your own perception. You begin to believe that the problem lives inside your own mind rather than inside the system that is punishing you for seeing clearly. And the cruelty of that particular wound is how quietly it works. No one has to strike you. They simply have to consistently treat your reality as less valid than the collective narrative. Over years, that quiet dismissal becomes a voice inside your own head, the voice that tells you you are too much, too sensitive, too intense, too broken to be loved the way you need to be loved. That voice does not belong to you. It was installed, and today begins the process of removing it with permanent force. The dinner table was a spiritual battlefield. Every meal where you sat with your mouth full of food and your heart full of unexpressed grief was a moment where two realities were colliding. The reality that the family insisted on performing, and the reality that your soul refused to stop perceiving. You were not allowed to bring your full self to that table, only the acceptable version, the version that did not ask hard questions, the version that did not grieve openly, the version that did not challenge the silence or notice the undercurrents of pain that everyone else had agreed to drown in small talk and routine. And so every holiday gathering became a kind of slow violence, the violence of existing at 3% of your full capacity while pretending that 3% was enough, while laughing at the right moments, while nodding, while performing the pantomime of family that the room required. And then going home and crying in a way you could not fully explain. Because how do you explain to someone that the loneliest place you have ever been was surrounded by your own blood? The shower has secrets. Every crying person knows the privacy of that particular space, the way the sound of water creates a permission structure for the grief you are not allowed to express anywhere else. You have stood under that water and let your body do what your face was not allowed to do in public. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere so deep, it barely sounds like crying at all. More like a pressure releasing. More like the body finally exhaling after hours of holding itself together, with nothing but sheer performance and survival instinct. In those moments, you were not weak. You were actually touching the most honest version of yourself. The version that knew with absolute cellular certainty that you were made for more than what that room was offering. The tears were not evidence of your brokenness. They were evidence of your integrity, because only a soul that knows its own worth can grieve the absence of being seen. Only a person who carries something real inside them can feel the weight of having that reality denied. God was in that shower with you. I need you to understand that. Every moment of that private grief, every night you sat with the loneliness of being the one in your family who felt too deeply, saw too clearly, wanted too honestly, God was present in that space with surgical precision, not to watch you suffer, but to collect what was being drawn out of you by the pressure of that pain. Because gold does not purify at room temperature, it requires a specific kind of heat. And the heat of family rejection, of being the one who is too much and never enough simultaneously, that is one of the most refining fires that exists. What was being burned away was your dependency on their approval. What was being built in its place was something that no human system can give you and no human system can take away. You were never meant to be like the others at that table. And the sooner you release the grief of that impossibility, the faster you step into the freedom of what you actually are. Think about Joseph for a moment. Not the Sunday school version stripped of its full horror, but the real story, the one where a 17-year-old boy is grabbed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit while they eat lunch nearby and listen to him scream, and then sold to strangers for 20 pieces of silver. Think about what that does to a nervous system. Think about what it means to look up from the bottom of that pit and see your brothers' faces looking down at you without mercy. To be carried away in chains while your father is told a lie about your death. Joseph did not just experience rejection, he experienced the complete and total betrayal of every relational structure that was supposed to protect him. His family, the very people who should have been his safety, became the instrument of his greatest suffering. And God allowed it. Not because God was cruel, because God knew that the throne Joseph was destined for could not be reached from inside the family system Joseph was born into. The pit was not the end, the pit was the doorway, but you cannot see that from the bottom of it. Your story carries the same architecture. The brothers who threw Joseph in the pit did not know they were cooperating with a divine promotion. They thought they were eliminating a threat. They thought they were solving the problem of his dreams, his visions, his irritating certainty that he was meant for something greater than what their shared life contained. And this is the pattern that repeats across every generation of chosen souls. The people most threatened by your light will always frame their attack as correction. They will tell you that you are arrogant, unrealistic, too big for your own good. They will dress their fear of your gift in the language of wisdom and concern. They will package their need to diminish you as genuine care for your well-being. And if you are not careful, if you have not yet learned to distinguish between the voice of love and the voice of control, you will internalize their assessment. You will decide that your dreams are delusions and your gifts are burdens and your calling is a fantasy invented by a mind too wounded to accept ordinary life. But your calling is not a fantasy, it is a frequency, and it has been broadcasting since before you were born. David knew something about this. He was anointed king while still smelling like sheep. His own father did not think to include him in the lineup when the prophet came looking. His brothers treated him with the particular contempt that siblings reserve for the one they sense is different in a way that threatens the existing order. And yet, the anointing was real before anyone recognized it. The oil ran down his head in the field before any palace wall ever held his name. God's confirmation does not require your family's agreement. God's assignment does not pause while waiting for the people in your house to finally see what heaven already declared. The confirmation was given. The anointing was real. The question was never whether David was chosen. The question was whether David would believe it before the crowd caught up. Are you believing it yet? Not performing belief, not convincing yourself with spiritual affirmations you recite, but do not feel, I mean truly, in the quiet of the self you are most honest with. Do you believe that what lives inside you is real and sacred and worth protecting? Because here is what I observe in the souls who carry this particular wound. The rejection of their family of origin often becomes the first and most durable argument against their own worthiness. You absorbed the message so early, at such a formative depth, that even as you grew and learned and built a life outside those walls, some part of you kept returning to that table and asking for an approval that was never going to come. Keep trying to be seen by the eyes that were never built to see you. Keep shrinking in rooms where your expansion was always going to be a problem. Keep waiting for the family to finally understand, finally celebrate, finally choose you in the way you needed to be chosen all those years ago when it would have made all the difference. As I teach deeply in the material, The 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life, I left the link for you in the pinned comment. This pain of waiting for approval from those who were never equipped to give it is one of the most common invisible chains I see in the lives of people who were meant to walk in extraordinary freedom. The link is there. The teaching is waiting, and you are ready for it now. The most devastating form of the approval trap is how invisible it is. You do not always know you are in it. You think you have moved on. You have your own life, your own home, your own rhythms. But then a holiday approaches and the familiar dread sets in. Or someone in your family makes an offhand comment and you spend 3 days internally processing it like it was a verdict on your entire existence. Or you achieve something genuinely extraordinary and your first instinct is to reach toward them, to see if this time, finally, this time, it will be enough to make them see you. The trap is not always a prison with visible bars. Sometimes it is simply the habit of the heart returning to the wrong source for confirmation of a worth that was never in question. Your worth was settled before you drew your first breath. The family of origin was not given the authority to unseal what God sealed. They could wound you, they could not define you. There is a permanent difference between those two things. Jesus knew what it was to be misunderstood by the people closest to him. His own family thought he had lost his mind. His neighbors in Nazareth, the people who watched him grow up, who knew his mother's face and his father's trade, they were the ones most offended by what he carried. Mark's gospel records it plainly. He could not do many works there because of their unbelief. The familiarity that should have been a foundation for faith had calcified into a ceiling. They knew the boy. They could not make room for the anointing. And the pattern is ancient, and it is consistent. The people who knew you before your awakening will often be the most resistant to the evidence of your transformation. They are not necessarily evil. They are simply invested in a version of you that no longer exists, and your expansion threatens the comfort of the story they have been telling about who you are. So they push back, they question, they minimize, they offer concerned advice that is actually controlled opposition dressed in the language of love. Every time someone told you that you were too sensitive, they were actually saying your capacity for depth made them uncomfortable. Every time they told you that you were too intense, they were confessing that your hunger for something real exposed the shallowness of what they had chosen to settle for. Every time they warned you about being too big for your boots, too ambitious, too different, they were projecting onto you the fear they had buried inside themselves when they chose safety over calling. The criticism was never truly about you. It was always about what your presence activated in them. And now I need you to feel the full weight of this. You spent years trying to fix something that was never broken. You tried to make yourself small enough to fit inside rooms that were not built to hold what God put inside you. You adjusted and accommodated and diminished and performed, and not because you were weak, but because you loved them and you wanted to belong. And belonging felt like it required you to be less than you were. That was the most costly sacrifice of your life. And it ends here. Because the God who watched you cry in that shower and sit invisible at that table and drive home, hollowed out after every gathering, was not a passive observer. He was an architect preparing a demolition. The isolation you endured was not abandonment dressed up as providence. It was training. It was the specific, targeted curriculum designed for souls who are being prepared for assignments that require a level of discernment, resilience, and interior freedom that comfortable lives simply cannot produce. You cannot develop the ability to truly see a wounded person unless you have known the inside of your own wound. You cannot hold space for someone whose family never understood them if you grew up in a family that saw you fully. The very experiences that felt like deprivation were actually deposits. Every night you had to comfort yourself because no one else would. You were developing a relationship with your own interiority that most people never cultivate. Every moment you had to hear the voice of God because no human voice around you was saying anything worth listening to. You were tuning a frequency that now cannot be jammed. The wilderness seasons in Scripture are never described as punishments. They are described as preparations. Moses was not exiled to the desert as a consequence. He was relocated there as a school. 40 years tending sheep in Midian, learning the topography of a land he would one day navigate with 2 million people following behind him. David was not sent to the hills to tend his father's flocks as an afterthought. He was placed there in the exact environment where he would develop the courage and the intimacy with God that would one day give him the audacity to walk toward a giant that had silenced an entire army. Elijah did not go to the wilderness as a retreat. He went there as a student in the University of Divine Dependency, learning that one person standing in the truth is already a majority when God is the majority. The wilderness is where ordinary people become vessels capable of carrying extraordinary weight, and you have been in yours for long enough. Something is shifting in the atmosphere around your life right now. You may feel it as a restlessness you cannot quite explain, not the anxious kind, not the kind that comes from fear, but a stirring, an alertness, like something important is close enough to sense before it is close enough to see. That is not your imagination. That is your spirit responding to movement in the spiritual realm. The season of isolation has served its purpose. The curriculum is reaching completion. And what comes next is not more wilderness. What comes next is the arrival. God is sending someone to your door, and I am not speaking in metaphor. I am speaking about the literal orchestration of divine appointments that heaven has been arranging while you were busy surviving the rooms that were never meant to hold you. Think about what the ending of Joseph's story actually looks like. The man who was thrown in the pit by his brothers becomes the one who has the power to decide whether they live or die. He does not use that power to destroy them. He uses it to reveal something even more devastating than punishment. He weeps. He weeps because the pain was real. The betrayal was real. The years of wondering why the people who should have loved him chose to sell him were real. And then he says the words that have echoed across millennia into the ears of every chosen soul who has sat at the wrong table wondering why. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Not that the evil was not evil, not that the pain was not pain, but that in the economy of divine sovereignty, what was intended to destroy you was hijacked and repurposed for your promotion. The pit was not the end. The pit was the beginning of a throne. And the brothers who threw you in, figuratively, the family members who minimized and dismissed and excluded and wounded you, they did not write your ending. They cooperated, unknowingly, bitterly, with a process they did not understand. They pushed you toward Egypt, and Egypt was where your throne was waiting. The protective removal you experienced was not God's indifference to your pain. It was God's refusal to let the pain become permanent. There is a story in Genesis that I need you to sit with carefully. When Lot and his family were being led out of a city that was about to be destroyed, the angels gave one instruction with absolute urgency. Do not look back. Lot's wife could not do it. She turned and the turning cost her everything. She became a pillar of salt, frozen in the direction of a destruction she could not stop mourning. The theologians have debated what exactly she was longing for, but the spiritual principle is unmistakable. There are former places, former relationships, former versions of acceptance and belonging that carry enough emotional gravity to pull you backward into a posture that will freeze your future in place. The thing you are looking back at is not necessarily good. It is simply familiar, and familiarity, when confused with belonging, becomes one of the most spiritually dangerous anchors that exists. Do not go back to the pit, seeking an apology that may never come. Do not keep returning to the table that required your disappearance just to experience one more moment of proximity to something you have already outgrown. Do not mistake the longing for the family you deserved for a command to keep chasing the family you had. Some doors were closed by God with permanent intention, not as punishment but as protection. The lock on that particular door is not your failure. It is your forwarding address. It is heaven's way of ensuring that what was consuming your calling could no longer reach you. The cord that was cut was the cord of a false belonging that would have cost you everything God designed you to carry. And I know that cutting it did not feel like freedom at first. I know it felt like loss. I know there is a grief that lives in the understanding that the family you needed did not exist inside the family you were born into. That grief is legitimate. Honor it, but do not let it become a chain that pulls you back into salt. The solitude that has accompanied this season has a purpose that is almost impossible to see when you are inside it. When you strip away the noise of a social environment that required you to perform, you are left alone with the most accurate voice available to you, yours, and beneath yours, the voice that spoke the universe into being. The wilderness is where you learn to distinguish between what you were told about yourself and what is actually true. It is where the false identities installed by a family system built on silence and performance began to dissolve under the sustained pressure of an interior life that refused to keep agreeing with the lie. You are not too sensitive. You are precisely calibrated for the people you are about to meet. You are not too intense. You are carrying the exact magnitude of light that the specific darkness you were assigned to address requires. You are not the problem. You were always the answer. And the season of solitude was the preparation for what you are about to step into. The chains that ran through your family did not originate with your parents. They go back further than that. Generational patterns of silence, of suppressed emotion, of choosing performance over presence, of love expressed through control, do not begin with a single individual. They are inherited systems, passed down through behavioral inheritance, through the unspoken rules that children absorb before they have language to question them, through the patterned responses to stress and intimacy and conflict that get downloaded into nervous systems before conscious memory begins. You were born into a chain that was old before you arrived. And the fact that you could feel the weight of it, that you knew something was wrong, even when everyone around you insisted everything was fine, that awareness was not a burden, it was a calling. Because chains do not break themselves. They require someone willing to feel the full weight of them and choose differently. You are that person in your line, not the victim of the pattern, the termination of it. That is what the black sheep carries, that the comfortable members of the family cannot see. The one who is pushed out carries the assignment to interrupt what would otherwise continue forever. The disruption of the peace that was never really peace. The refusal to maintain the silence that was never really silence, just a collective agreement to keep the unspoken things unspoken and the unexamined things unexamined. Your presence was a threat to that agreement. And rather than examine the agreement, the system expelled you. But expulsion from a system built on silence is not exile. It is liberation. You were not removed from where you belonged. You were released from what was containing you. And the assignment that was being contained inside you is now free to do what it was always designed to do. And now, finally, here at the edge of this long wilderness road, here at the border of the season that is ending and the one that is beginning, I need you to receive this with every part of yourself that is willing to believe it. The tribe is coming. Not the family you were born into, something altogether new. Something assembled not by genetics and obligation and the proximity of shared addresses, but by the deliberate hand of a God who has been watching you survive and grow and refuse to stop reaching for something real and true and worth living for. Your people are being drawn toward you the way metal filings are drawn toward a magnet, not randomly, not coincidentally, but by the specific frequency you are now broadcasting after years of refinement. The discernment you developed in those difficult rooms will let you recognize them when they arrive. The wholeness you built in the wilderness will let you receive them without the desperation that false belonging produces. The love you learn to give yourself will make you capable of giving them something that does not diminish you to offer. Stop waiting for the ones who wounded you to finally see you clearly enough to apologize. Stop holding your full self hostage to a validation that was never theirs to give. Stop measuring your worthiness against the capacity of people who were never equipped to see what God placed inside you. The door that is opening right now, the one you can feel in that restlessness that has been building in your chest, is not a door back into the rooms that required your disappearance. It is a door forward into a life sized to hold everything you actually are. The divine appointment is not a metaphor. It is a calendar entry already written in heaven. And the only question that remains is whether you will be present and open and ready to receive it when it arrives at your threshold. The family you were always meant to have is being assembled. The connections built not on blood obligation, but on genuine recognition are being prepared. Somewhere, right now, someone who also survived the room that tried to make them disappear is being moved in your direction by the same God who refused to let either of you be consumed by the systems that tried to shrink you. Your paths are converging. The appointment is real. And you, the one who endured the pit, who sat invisible at the table, who cried in the shower and drove home, hollowed out and kept asking the question underneath all the questions, you are not a broken person waiting to be fixed. You are a chosen soul arriving at the exact moment you were always designed to arrive. The isolation was the preparation, the rejection was the protection, the wilderness was the workshop. And the door that is opening right now is the door you were made to walk through. Walk through it without looking back, without waiting for their blessing, without needing their under.